Good morning, everyone from Australia. I am sitting here out in the sun. It's a beautiful day. I've got the roses behind me. This is a good little metaphor. I always say that freedom-based training is probably the slowest way you can ever train a horse. So there's lots of stopping to smell the roses along the way. I'm out here on this just beautiful morning. And I've been watching the horses play in the field behind me, and it's been a really good day. It's been a really good tour. I am at the end of a 7-week tour where I've gotten to go around the world. It's quite amazing. And I thought I would talk about it a little this morning in Tea with Elsa. So I have been all through Europe and through New Zealand and Australia. And I just finished my final clinic yesterday. And I feel like I've learned a lot. I can't wait to go home and play with the stallions and see if everything I've learned on my trip actually helps out my horses at home as well. That's the plan. We'll see. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about something that's become really clear to me as I've been teaching. And this is something I've taught for a long time, but the clarity of it has gotten a lot sharper for me. And that is that everyone just wants to feel better. Horses, people, you name it. We all just want to feel better. I know, Sandra, I miss you guys in Portugal too. Thank you, Deborah. I'm glad you're here from Florida. It's so much fun. It's like a party. Everybody gets to join me at tea time for talking about things. So, this idea that everybody just wants to feel better. It's really helped me have a lot of empathy for whatever it is that happens. I think that we are looking for ways to educate our horses in stress-reducing techniques. Because when stress shows, the horse is going to show it in either fight, flight, or freeze. If you think about it, if a horse never tried to run away from you, and they never tried to push into you, and they were always interested and curious, you would never need a halter. You would never need a tool. And so, our goal with our horses is to cause them to feel enough better that they don't show any of those pushing into you actions or running away actions, or freezing up and not being able to think actions. So Christian, absolutely. We just want to feel better. All of us want to feel better. And actually, the horses want us to do the same. They would really like us to not feel like we have to push into them. They would like us to feel like we don't have to run away from them. They would like us to be able to think and be fun and be playful and all those good things. So I break this down into really simple terms. If stress gets too high, you see fight, flight, or freeze. If stress is at a really functional level, you get the opposite of those. So instead of fighting, you get playing. And instead of flight, you get yield. And yield means that someone makes room for you to go places with them. And if you don't get freeze, you get thinking. Thinking is where curiosity and interest come from. So all of those, the bad and the good, are efforts to feel better. And this is the thing that's really become obvious to me as I've been teaching, is that when a horse goes to have a fight with another horse, they're not just fighting for the hell of it. They're fighting because they want to feel better. It's an effort to put pressure on their friend to learn about them. If you hadn't stood there, I wouldn't feel this bad. If you hadn't done that thing, I would feel better. And then fight is this effort to educate your friends to treat you better. Unfortunately, then flight is your effort to get away from those friends who are trying to educate you. So you run away from anybody who tries to push on you too much. And so these things they're not bad things. They are efforts to feel better. Okay, fight is an effort to correct someone else so that if they were a better friend, you wouldn't feel so bad. Flight is an effort to get away from someone who is putting too much pressure on you to be a better friend. They're just efforts to feel better. But when we can shift the stress level to a slightly more functional state, then you have the positive sides of those. So instead of fighting, you have playing. Can you play a game where you push into each other a little bit, or you push into the environment a little bit, and it's fun, and that's going to bond you together. And when the stress is more functional, you get play instead of fight. And that's how things get more functional. Yeah, I know, Jackie. Absolutely. This weather is stunning. I wish I could send it to you in the UK. I'm soaking up as much of it as I can before I go home in a couple of days. So fight turns into play when the stress becomes more functional. And the more horses learn how to play to feel better, the less they have to fight. Same thing with yield. So yield is where you move, but you make room for someone to move with you. The more horses learn how to yield, the less they have to go into flight. Okay, so yielding is one of those things that's bonding, it's soothing, it lowers stress. But sometimes if horses are really stressed, they don't know how to act in playful, yielding, thinking ways. So they resort to the bad stuff, which is fighting, flight, and freeze. I love it, Rico. You're just adding words here. Ponder, play, profit. I'll have to think about that. In any case, we really want to think about how we lower the stress for our horses enough that they start choosing the nicer ways to lower their own stress. So when they're in the functional band of stress, they can choose a functional way to stay there. When they spike too high, they feel like they have to fight or run or freeze up and stop thinking in order to be okay, in order to feel better. And I think if we start to realize that those things are not horrible things, those things are just a really desperate effort for the horse to feel better, we can have a lot more compassion for them. Same thing in ourselves. When we fight with our horses, we are just trying to feel better. We're trying to explain to the horse they should act differently so that we feel better. When we run away, when we end the session and we feel bad about it and we don't want to be out there with the horse, we're just trying to get away from a bad feeling. Those things aren't terrible, but they are less useful than if we could learn to play and yield and think as our stress-reducing mechanisms. So finding that happy medium, that is exactly right. That is the challenge. And that's the thing that I study and I'm really excited about. The interesting part of freeze that comes in is things like eating grass, okay? A horse that gets so fixated on eating grass and they can't think of anything else. That's actually a really good stress-reducing mechanism. They feel a lot better if they can just keep stuffing food in their mouth. But it's not a particularly useful one for our relationship. So when horses want to feel better and they just want to eat and eat and eat and eat, we have to think, God, could we expand your varieties of stress-reducing mechanisms? Because that form of freeze requires an insane amount of patience from me if I want to be your friend. If you could get interested and curious in the world more and use that as your stress-reducing mechanism, we could be better friends. And so there's some interesting versions of freeze that come up that really do help a horse. They do feel a lot better when they get stuck in one thought pattern that's soothing. So, yeah, Christian, it's nice to feel better in ourselves, and it's even better when our horse and us feels better together. So yeah, George, absolutely. Beer is a great one. Self-soothing mechanism, lowers stress, but it's really only good as a friendship-building mechanism if your friends want to drink beer with you. Sometimes you can drink beer while the horses eat grass or hay, and sometimes that works. But nonetheless, the functional stress-reducing mechanisms are things you can share with a friend, something you can do with a friend. The dysfunctional stress-reducing mechanisms are things that your friends don't want to be around anymore. And so we have to really think about that with our horses. How do we foster the stress-reducing mechanisms that make them better friends? They just want to feel better. They honestly, I don't think they really care how. They're going to use the mechanisms that have worked the best for them in the past, but they just want to feel better. And if we can strengthen and nurture the kind of stress-reducing mechanisms that make them better friends, I think their life gets better on the whole. So those are my thoughts for this tea with Elsa on Tuesday in the US. It's Wednesday here in Australia. I will be headed back to the States in a couple of days, and I'll be back with the stallions, and the filming for Taming Wild Evolution continues. So I'm really excited to take everything I've learned on my trip while I've been teaching. I really do think I learn as much as I teach, and I'm going to take it home and put it into good use. So absolutely, Christian, I agree. As humans, it's hard for us to break our patterns. It's the same thing for the horses. It's hard for them to break their patterns too. And yeah, Janet, curiosity is really a constructive tool for a lot of horses. It's the opposite of fear. So keep that in mind when you're out there. Just remember, when your horses are acting in ways you don't like, they are just trying to feel better. Help them find better ways to feel better, and just continue on and enjoy the process. So thank you, everyone, and I will see you next week.